welcome back to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay. Here at Cafe Oleh with Nefesh B'Nefesh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need here in Israel to succeed, whether that is reading and paying your bills, going grocery shopping and reading nutritional labels, keeping up with the news, striking up a conversation, flirting, dating, job interviewing, complaining, all the everyday things you do in your native language in your country of origin, but here in Israel in modern Hebrew. As always, we'd like to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. You can always be in touch with us by email at hebrew@nbn.org.il. You can also see all of our previous lessons up on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, type in Cafe Oleh. The very first result will be the beginning of our playlist. You click full playlist. You'll see over, I think we're at 122 videos at this point, more than 18,000 views. We've covered a lot of topics. We're going to cover a lot of them again so that you have both a fresh perspective on them and also the vocabulary spreadsheet that goes along with them. If you're joining us live on Zoom, you can write to us with any comments, concerns, questions, and certainly topic requests in the chat box. If you're joining us live on Zoom, also please use the Q&A for any questions related to the class we're about to start. Everything not related to today's class stays in the chat. You can also comment on our videos on YouTube. That also gets our numbers up, but also we check those comments as well. You'll get a copy of the video of the class and the spreadsheet shortly afterwards by email, or just check back on YouTube. Today we're going to do some review because it's the next big holiday starting tomorrow night here in Israel and elsewhere in the world, which is the how shall we say, in some circles is the lesser of the three pilgrimage festivals. There are three pilgrimage festivals. These were the ones that Jews came en masse to the temple in Jerusalem to give offerings and to celebrate, of course. We know the big ones in that they're long. They're at least 7 days here in Israel, 8 days abroad. Pesach, aka Passover, that we just celebrated a month or so ago or a few months ago, and Sukkot in the fall, but starting tomorrow is the third one, Shavuot. Shavuot in a lot of circles, I'm not saying everyone, but outside of a lot of observant circles outside of Israel, it's not as big of a deal, right? It's not the week-long festival. It doesn't have specific food restrictions. It doesn't have living conditions like Sukkot does. It's 1 day in Israel, 2 days abroad. It doesn't have as much. Shavuot has become, I would say, as Israeli of a holiday as Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day, and Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel's Independence Day are. And it doesn't have to do with dairy foods. We're going to talk about that, but we're going to talk about what makes Shavuot so Israeli and how Israel made Shavuot its own holiday. And by doing so, we're going to go through the words you need and the topics you need to understand Shavuot from an Israeli perspective, not a Jewish perspective, an Israeli perspective. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. We're also going to test your Hebrew later on. Hopefully we're going to have time. I'm going to show you a snippet from a documentary I've shown in the past about Shavuot that helps explain how Shavuot became a very Jewish and Israeli thing all at once here in Israel. You're going to need to stretch your Hebrew speaking abilities and listening abilities, especially for it. I'll cue you when that's going on. But in the meantime, let's get started. So I'm going to share my screen. As always, you're welcome to old school pen and paper. You are welcome to screenshot, and like I said, you will get a copy of this by email as well as in our YouTube recorded video. So first off, Shavuot. Shavuot means weeks in Hebrew. Shavua is 1 week. Shavuot are weeks. Okay, and the idea is that we just counted since Pesach to Shavuot, leading up to Shavuot. There's a lot of different meanings ascribed to Shavuot, and we see some of these by its various names. Shavuot has some of the most names of any holiday there is in the Jewish calendar. So first off, it means weeks, referring to the weeks between Pesach and Shavuot. One of the names of Shavuot, in addition to the name Shavuot, is Chag Matan Torah. Chag Matan Torah. Matan is the act of giving. It's the verbal noun of the verb latit. And Torah, the Torah. Right? It's the festival of the giving of Torah. One of the meanings that's ascribed to this holiday is that it's the day on which God gave the Torah to Moshe, to Moses on Mount Sinai. A lesser known one that's celebrated in some Jewish communities around the world, it's called Chag HaMayim, Festival of Water. It's getting hot in the land of Israel, those of you who live here. And one of the ways to celebrate it was splashing water and being thankful for water. But the two I want to focus on that make this a very Israeli holiday are these two names, Chag HaKatzil and Chag HaBikurim. Chag HaKatzil. Katzil comes from the verb lekatzel or liktzor. Both of them mean the same idea, is to cut or to shorten something. And Chag HaKatzil means the festival of the harvest or festival of the reaping. Katzil, and we're going to go through this in a little bit, Katzil is the act of reaping grain, of cutting sheaves of grain. Because remember, starting in Pesach, and for the last 48 days, we've been giving, when the temple existed, we gave offerings of young green barley. Now, by Shavuot, because the Jewish calendar is connected to the ecology and the cycle of time and all the nature in the land of Israel, by this point, the grain has ripened and it's ready to be cut, to be harvested. Katzil, like I said, is one of the many names we have for our harvest in Israel, and that's one of its names. And the other one that also has to do with harvesting is Chag HaBikurim. Bikurim are first fruits. One of the traditional sacrifices or offerings that was given on this day is the first fruits of one's crop to the temple in Jerusalem. And that's a big deal, and we'll come back to both of these because these have major important significance in how Israelis celebrate Shavuot to this day. And again, nothing to do with dairy. Before we go on, because Shavuot and the three pilgrimage holidays are very agricultural. Yes, they have connections with the larger Jewish history and the cycle of Jewish history, but they also have a lot to do with the nature's cycle and the cycle of agriculture here in the land of Israel. And like I said, Katzil, which is one of the names of this holiday, Chag HaKatzil, means harvesting grain. We have specific names in Hebrew that have to do with specific types of produce harvest. I didn't put all of them on there. There's ones for dates, there's ones for figs. I went through the big ones that you're going to hear a lot of throughout the year. First off is Katzil. This is the time for HaKatzil, which means the grain harvest. It's not any harvest, it's the grain harvest. It's very important. We have all these words, and we've talked about this before. Hebrew has a very limited amount of vocabulary, right? At most, if we include all of the compound words out there, it's about 75 to 80,000 words. That's not a lot, certainly in comparison to a language like English, which is 250,000. Okay, so when we have different words that in another language translate the same way, we have to dig a little deeper and understand. So for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 5 words all translate into English as harvest. That is incorrect. They all have to do with a specific type of harvest of a specific type of produce grown in the land of Israel. Okay, so the first one, katzil, is the grain harvest, coming from the same verb, meaning, first off, the adjective katzal, short, and lekatzer and liksor, to cut. Right? Because that's what you're doing when you harvest grain. You're cutting the stalks, you're cutting the sheaves in order to get to the grain. The next one is Batzil. Batzil will take place in another 2 months from now. Batzil is the grape harvest. It is only the grape harvest. Again, each of these terms corresponds with a specific crop. Batzil, when you hear the word batzir, batzir, Batzil, however you pronounce the letter resh, has to do with grapes only. It takes place towards the end of the summer. Okay. The next one, Masik. Masik takes place in the middle of the winter, usually in December, January. Masik is the olive harvest. Okay, it's when olives are ripe and you harvest them from the trees. And then we have 2 general terms. One is katif and one is asif. Katif only refers to tree fruits. I've been volunteer farming in Israel for the last 3 or so weeks, at least once a week. It's been incredibly meaningful, and knowing how helpful it is to farmers who are still affected from October 7th to be able to help them salvage what crops are left, because all their foreign laborers are gone. They don't have enough people to help. It's getting hot out. A lot of the fruit needs to be harvested, and it's specifically a lot of katif, because that's also the easiest for volunteers like myself to do. Katif are fruits that grow on trees only, whether that's lemons or other citruses or pomegranates or apples or cherries or any stone fruit. Katif are tree fruits only. Okay? And then finally, asif. Asif is the only term that can be used in a general sense, right? Because liktof means to pick off a tree. Le'esof, the verb which we use to collect something, gives us the word asif. Asif means a general harvest or a vegetable harvest. Anything that grows on the ground, or just in general, anything that you are doing produce, you're harvesting. Okay, all 5 of these, and like I said, there are more of them. There's ones for dates, there's one for figs. I think that's as specific as they get. Otherwise, we use katif or asif. Are really important, obviously, to people that are so connected to a specific plot of land. We use these terms, and people understand them in modern Hebrew, all 5 of these. Anyone, regardless of their religiosity, will understand these terms. Bikurim, like I said, means first fruits, and that is one of the gives us one of the names of this holidays, because that's one of the things that's given. If you look outside again, in addition to some of the fruits that are being harvested, this is the beginning of the harvest season, right? It ends in Sukkot. What begins in Shavuot ends in Sukkot, in the fall of reaping and harvesting fruits and vegetables. Excuse me. Bikurim, the same root of the verb, of the word, excuse me, bet kaf resh, gets us the word bechor. Bechor means firstborn, and bechora, premiere. So a hakranat bechora is a premiere screening of a film, right? This root, bet chaf resh, and we talk about roots a lot in Cafe Oleh, as you remember, because roots have their own meaning. When you plug it into a specific form of a word that has its own meaning, you create a word out of those 2 meanings. So in this case, bet chaf resh has to do with something being first. First fruits, firstborn, the premiere of something. Okay? All great words. Let's get into more about Shavuot, and a important part as it's seen by a lot of people, and then we're going to get to some specifics about Shavuot in Israel. So first off, Shibolet and Shibolim. Again, this is Chag HaKatzir, the holiday of the grain harvest. And so you're going to see a lot especially in flour stores in Israel now, and a lot of places that are getting ready for the holiday and have a lot of things on sale for the holiday. You're going to see a lot of shibolet or shibolim. These are ear or ears of grain. Think of a stalk of grain, be it wheat or barley or anything like that. And it has, right, the seeds with the wispy parts coming off. That is a shibolet. Shibolim are multiple ones of these, okay? And oftentimes you'll see them either as a bouquet or woven together. The other thing you'll see this year, and it's a term we only use this time of year, only once do we use this term, which is tene. Tene is known the rest of the year as a sal. Both of these terms mean a basket. Shavuot, again, being Chag HaKatzir and Chag HaBikurim, the festival of the first fruits, you were to bring your first fruits in a basket as an offering to the temple in Jerusalem. And so it's a tradition in schools today that students, kids bring a tene to school, usually full of things, either to share or just to celebrate the holiday together before having the day off. And it's always a rush. It's a classic rush among families to find a tene and fill it up with stuff before sending their kid to school ahead of Shavuot. Tene is not a word we use anytime other than Shavuot. We only use the word sal the rest of the year. Sal is a basket. whether that is a hand basket, a woven basket, a grocery store basket, whatever it is. A sal is a basket, right? For those of you who've made Aliyah, you know what a sal klita is. That is your absorption basket. That is all the benefits and rights that are afforded to you as an Oleh or Olah. Sal, many of you have probably shopped before at Shufel Sal, right? The largest supermarket chain in Israel, with the word sal in it as well, basket. Any other time of the year, we use the word sal. Only on Shavuot do we use the word teneh. Okay. And then finally, another thing you'll see, and this gets into what makes Shavuot so Israeli, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, is you're going to see a lot of people wearing a zer larosh. Zer larosh, zer is a bouquet or a garland, and rosh is head. Zer larosh is a head garland or wreath. In Israel, it's very popular to wear one on your birthday, but you'll also see people wear them on Shavuot. Why? We'll get to in a little bit. But just know these are terms you're going to hear, if not see, throughout Israel, if you haven't already in the last week or so. Okay. I need to burst a bubble here before we get to this next topic. Folks, Shavuot is a dairy holiday, much like how Valentine's Day in America is a Hallmark holiday. I hate to bust that bubble, but it's true. I need to get my cheesecake on as much as other people, but this holiday is not about dairy. The dairy part came in because there is a tradition among Ashkenazi Jews, Jews who come from Central and Eastern Europe. It's not a widespread tradition, but it was maintained that one is supposed to eat dairy products on Shavuot. There are all sorts of reasons given. The classic one many of us know on this call is that until the laws of kashrut, of keeping kosher, were given on Har Sinai in the Torah, that was the safest thing for the Israelites to eat. It's a minor minhag, it's a minor custom. I have to tell you the honest truth about it. It was a holiday, it was a tradition rather, created by Tnuva, Israel's first and largest dairy concern in the 20s and 30s, to better promote dairy products. That's the story, folks. That's why we eat dairy on this holiday. That's why we're so obsessed with eating dairy on this holiday. It's a commercial thing. Now, you can believe in whatever minhag you want. It's wonderful. Like I said, I need my cheesecake on Shavuot. I'd love to be able to eat cheesecake all year, but that's not going to happen. And this is a great reason for it. But that is an aforementioned thought. That being said, dairy is a big deal for Shavuot. Dairy is a big deal in Israel in general, which is why I'm going to introduce this topic by talking about a very important thing for those of us who live in Israel, which is pikuach. I'm not talking about pikuach nefesh. Again, we have to separate between modern Hebrew and religious Hebrew. Pikuach nefesh is an important concept in Jewish tradition, and you'll hear about it in Israeli society and culture, and it even is in terms of law and order and things like that. But now I'm talking about something different. I'm talking about pikuach in the sense of pikuach memshalti on food. Pikuach in this sense means control. And what we're talking about is price control. Israel has certain price controls in place on staple foods. And I'm going to break here for a second so that you can see what I'm talking about if you don't know about this already. Some other countries have this. A lot of European countries have this, where certain foods are under price control to ensure that, everyone has equal access to basic food stuffs. I'm going to show you the list in Israel. You don't need this list. I'll happily add this link to the description on YouTube so you'll have access to it. But anytime you go in a supermarket in Israel, any supermarket in Israel, you will see price for certain food products, the 21 products on this list, that are price controlled. Whether it says on the sign in Hebrew, pikuach memshalti, government price control, or it's just the price that's on there, these 21 products are guaranteed by the state of Israel to have a certain price. They cannot be sold at a different price. They're all produced in Israel. The ones that are produced in Israel and fall under these categories are of a certain price. And what you see on this list is the requirements for it to be included and the pricing of it. I'm only going to look at dairy. I'm only going to look at a few dairy products. Like I said, there's 21 products that are included. You see eggs of certain sizes. Then we get to cheeses. There's, I believe, there's a whole bunch here. So first off, let's get to cheese, right? There is semi-soft, semi-hard cheese, 22% fat. That's included. There is 28% included cheese, semi-hard cheese. There is 5% white cheese. That's spreadable cheese you see all the time. Milk, 1%. Milk, 3%. Milk in a bag, that classic invention only here in Canada, I think, do. 1%. 3% fat. Certain bread, including challah for Shabbat, is under price control. Again, these are very specific types of things, folks. Before you come after me in the comments about, well, wait a minute, my artisanal bakery sells challah not at this price. I know that. We're talking about government price control things, which means that it has to fall under certain rubrics. I'm not going to go into all of it now. I just want to introduce this for those who don't know about government price control in general, let alone in Israel. But there is for bread food, there's breads, there's for certain spices, so salt is included. We have more, and this is where I want to get, we're going to talk about these types of dairy products as well. We have two products in Israel. One is eshel and one is gil. Both of these are what we call in the Middle East leben. Leben is best thought of as somewhere between yogurt and buttermilk. They're neither yogurt nor buttermilk. They're cultured. They have live cultures in them, but it's a runnier, thinner product than yogurt. Eshel, the only difference between eshel and gil is the fat content. Eshel is 4.5% fat. Gil is 3.5%, is 3%, right? All of these, right? It has to say exactly what it is. The category here, for example, it says totzeret chalav nigeret, raw milk, right? The category it falls under is raw milk products. The responsible office, the Misrad Achai, Misrad HaChaklaut, the Ministry of Agriculture. Mishkal va'ariza, gavia 200 milliliter, excuse me, in a cup that's 200 milliliters, right? That the wholesale price, machio lekamnoai lelo ma'am, the wholesale price without VAT added is 1.38 shekel. The price for the consumer, including VAT, is 1.93 shekel, and the price in Eilat, because remember Eilat is a tax-free zone, is 1.65 shekel. Idkun Acharon, the last time this price was updated, the 1st of May 2024, and then you can see the history of the price increase, okay? We have some other dairy products that are included here. I said gil, which is 3% leben, shamenet chamutza, excuse me, 15%, this is sour cream. Literally, shamenet is cream, chamutza, sour, so sour cream at 15% fat is under pikuach as well. We have a few more products, what we call sweet cream or whipping cream, other people would call it. 38% fat is also under pikuach. Okay, so 21 products altogether that are under pikuach mamshalti. A lot of these are dairy products, as you saw. These are important all throughout the year, not just on Shavuot, because this helps people save money. These are considered basic foodstuffs that everyone has access to, and everyone is entitled to get a fair price on basic foodstuffs. Now, again, they have to be grown in Israel, or they have to be considered under pikuach memshalti. There will be a sign and pricing that goes with it. If you are buying something artisanal, if you're buying something gourmet, sometimes even if you're buying something imported, it won't fall under pikuach. That's a very important distinction. So if you're going to your neighborhood, again, artisanal gourmet bakery, that challah or that white bread may not fall under pikuach. You can't strike a fight with them. It's a very specific list of price-controlled consumer products. As you see here, there's also a link in English. I think Hebrew is most important, but just so you know, we'll send you this link. You'll be able to see the whole thing in English as well. Okay. So with that, let's go back to our list of vocabulary. So now that we talked about pikuach and got that out of the way, let's talk dairy products. Chalav is milk. Okay. Chalavi is dairy. Anything that is dairy, that contains a dairy product in it is called chalavi. And as I talked about the other week, chalavi is also in slang for something that's boring. As someone pointed out, it's the same thing in certain English-speaking countries as milk toast, right? If you've heard that term milk toast before, that's the equivalent in Hebrew of chalavi. If you call someone or something chalavi, it's boring. It's not bland, but it's boring like the color white. Like a white background is bland. It's boring. It doesn't have anything going on it that gives it some flavor. Okay. And from the same root, chet lamed bet, which also, by the way, gives us the root, the verb lachlov, to milk, as in an animal. We also get chelbon. Chelbon is protein, whether that's dairy protein, meat protein, vegetable protein. All protein in Israel, regardless of its origin, is called chelbon. What it's made out of, you'll see that on the list of ingredients that we've gone through lists of ingredients in the past, in our previous lessons. Let's go through some major dairy products, because again, I know what's on everyone's mind when we talk about Shavuot. Don't worry, I'm gonna burst that in a little bit further, that is. Gvina. Gvina is the catch-all term for cheese. If you want to say a specific type of cheese, you're going to turn it into a compound noun. Gvinat, you're going to turn that hey into a taf, and then say the name of it. So for example, if I wanted to say or go to the store and either look for or ask for at the cheese counter cheddar cheese, the way I'm going to ask it is ani rotze gvinat cheddar. Okay? Or gvinat, whatever it is you want. If it has a specific name to it, only if it has a specific name to it, okay? It's just a description of a cheese, you're not going to say this. So for example, if you want a hard cheese, gvina kasha. If you want a soft cheese, like a brie, like a camembert, like a blue cheese, you're going to ask for a gvina raka. Rach means tender. In this case, it means soft. Okay. We talked about leben just before. It's a cultured milk product, somewhere that falls between yogurt and buttermilk. You can even add sour cream in there. It's a very sour taste. That is different, however, from a lot of people's favorite yogurt product, labane. Labane, labne, lebne, however you pronounce it, is not the same thing as leben. Labane is thick, it's creamy. You can almost think of it like a Greek yogurt. By the way, Greek yogurt in Israel is called yogurt besignon Yavani. Yogurt in the Greek style. Okay, you have to look for it specifically. It's not going to be called yogurt Yavani. Yogurt besignon Yavani. Labane is the Middle Eastern version of, the best way to think of it is it's the same version in that the liquid from the yogurt has been further drained away. So it's a thicker, spreadable paste, a dip almost like Greek yogurt. Okay. Let's talk about some other terms we use at this time of year. Cream. Like I showed you, cream is included in the list of dairy products that are under pikuach, under price control. Shamenet is the overall term for cream, whether that's shamenet chamutza, sour cream, or shamenet metuka, as we saw, sweet cream that's used for whipping. This is an important point for my fellow Americans. In Israel, there is no half and half. It does not exist as a product. Half and half is half milk, half cream, so you can make it yourself, but you will be hard pressed, if not impossible, to find sold in the dairy aisle of your supermarket half and half. That's a very American thing. It's not a universal thing. Okay. We talked about chalav. We now talked about shamenet, cream. We get other words from the same root, shin, mem, nun. And that's why they're all put in this same block together. So after shamenet, we get the word shemen. Many of you know the word shemen already. Shemen means oil. Again, any kind of oil. Shemen zait, olive oil. Shemen avocado, avocado oil. Shemen simchi, vegetable oil. Shemen canola, canola oil, and so forth. Okay, shemen is simply the catch-all term for oil. Oil, by the way, that we eat, we consume, not oil that goes into a vehicle or a motor. That's a different word. Shamen is fat as an adjective. To call someone or something fat is shamen. Shuman is the noun. Fat, as in how much fat, as we saw in that list of products under pikuach, right? The difference between 3% shuman and 3 and 4.5% shuman. That's the term fat. Okay, the fat content or how much fat something has. Something that is fattening as an adjective is mashmin. Lehashmin as a verb is to get fat or to fatten something up. Okay. Mashmin, though, as an adjective means fattening. It's also a participle. And then finally, in this category, we always have to include it, is a term, one term you're rarely going to hear and another term you're going to hear a lot more. And we get this term, anyone who's part of any Facebook group that deals with olim or with immigrants will come across this question probably about 500 times. Number one, because everyone wants to ask it. Number two, because everyone forgets there's a search function in Facebook, and you can actually search to see if someone's already asked it, and chances are they have. What is buttermilk in Israel? Buttermilk is not very popular in Israel. The major population that consumes buttermilk in Israel are those from the former Soviet Union, because buttermilk was a staple product in the former Soviet Union. It is not so commonly consumed in Israel, which is why if you ask for chuvtza, which is the proper Hebrew term for buttermilk, most people won't know what you're asking for. But if you ask for rivion, everyone will know what you're talking about. Rivion is the Kleenex of buttermilk, right? Rivion is a trademarked name. It is the name under which I believe it's Tnuva, the largest dairy concern in Israel, albeit no longer Israeli owned, creates buttermilk. And if you go to the supermarket, as I'm speaking after this class, and you'll see a carton, it's usually a smaller carton. It's not a big liter or larger carton, and they'll say Rivion on it, or Rivion, or Rivion, or we pronounce the resh. That's the brand name for buttermilk sold by Tnuva. Okay, even if it's not made by Tnuva, everyone will know this as Rivion, because again, it's not a popular thing in Israel. So when people ask for it, they just know it by its name. Right? It's again like Xerox or Kleenex or any of the other things that we call by the company that made it popular. In this case, for buttermilk. Okay, some other terms that are important when we're looking at dairy products, because again, I know where everyone's mind is. Muashal. Muashal comes from the same root as the word ashir, rich. So muashal is to become rich, or in this case, enriched. It's the passive form of to become rich, enriched. A lot of dairy products, particularly milk, is enriched in Israel. There's usually added calcium, there's added vitamin D, sometimes some other things as well. So if that's important to you, you want to look on the label before you buy chalav. If it says muashal, and then with what? You can also get in Israel chalav dal lactose or chalav natul lactose. Dal means low. Dal also is the term you're going to use, for example, if you want low fat, right? Many of us who order a cafe hafuch or simply a hafuch, that very milky coffee in Israel, right? That's beyond a cappuccino or a latte. Oftentimes we'll order a hafuch dal, which stands for hafuch dal shuman, right? Meaning you want a non-fat cafe latte or a non-fat hafuch, right? That's what dal means. It means low. In this case, you could say dal shuman, low fat, or on a lot of milk products, because milk products in general, let alone among Israeli Jews, are hard to consume. You'll see a lot more dairy products that are listed as being dal lactose. Lactose. So if it's low lactose, right, that's easier for some people to digest. And you'll even find things that are natul lactose, things that are dairy, that are lactose free, right? In America, the big brand is Lactaid. In Israel, the major milk companies also create a natul lactose, a lactose free milk. You can also use natul for other things. For example, natul caffeine. אני רוצה הפוך דל נטול. If you were to order הפוך דל נתון, first off, bless your heart, as we say, that means that you want a decaffeinated, fat-free הפוך, right? Natul stands for natul caffeine. It could stand for natul lactose, but in this case, when you're ordering coffee, for example, and you say natul, it means you want decaf coffee, right? As you see here, D dash or dash free, natul means. Okay, so two great words you can also apply to many other products, not just milk. And we had this word the other day when we talked about foods, other foodstuffs, simchi and minat someach. Both of these will mean plant-based. So if you see a drink that says chalav simchi or chalav minat someach, you know that it's a plant-based milk. We have a lot of different kinds in Israel, but that'll be very clear that it is not dairy milk. Okay. Okay, we got to get this out of the way because I know it's on everyone's mind. Like I said, mine included. Ugat gvina. That's how we say cheesecake. It's really easy. It's just like in English, it's a compound word of the words cheese and cake. So too, we have the word uga, cake, and gvina, cheese. To make it into a compound noun, the hey at the end of uga turns into a taf, ugat, followed by gvina. Two nouns creating a compound noun. Cream cheese in Israel, in Hebrew, is called gvinat shamenet. It's the literal translation. Gvina, again, cheese, shamenet, cream. Gvinat shamenet is cream cheese. Very important. And I can't stress this enough because as much as I don't like sharing or I don't like being out of access to proper cheesecake, I want to be sure you buy the right cheesecake. In Israel, the vast majority of pre-made cheesecakes are a European style. They are fluffy, they are light. I don't usually pass judgment, but yuck. I want signon americai. I want American style cheesecake. What we call in Hebrew, the Hebrew word for it is trusa, dense, right? You want that cream cheese tang. You want that thickness. You want that richness. You want that one bite and you can't move. When you go to buy a cheesecake in Israel pre-made, you need to make sure you are getting a ugat gvina besignon americai, an American style cheesecake. Otherwise, you're going to get the European fluffy style. If you like that, again, bless your heart. But an American style cheesecake will be made with vinat shamenet, cream cheese. Okay, that's the major difference. Besides, the other one is fluffy. It's not made with American style cream cheese. If you are having for Shavuot a brunch, for example, there's a wonderful woman here in the center of the country who makes American style bagels. So we're having a brunch, ordered a whole bunch of bagels, and made sure that either I ordered from her or went to the supermarket to buy gvinat shamenet besignon americai, American style cream cheese. Yes, you can buy Philly cream cheese in Israel. Right? The other food thing that is very popular on this day, and it's a slight difference in pronunciation and it's important, is blintzes. In Israel, you do not say blintzes. In Israel, you say blinches. Okay, it's a slight difference, but it's an important one. Ask for blinches, you'll get blintzes. Same word. Okay. Okay. Another really popular food on not just on Shavuot, but frankly all year round, and this is a very classic Israeli food, is pashtida. The best way to translate pashtida is a crustless quiche. It's not quite a frittata. It's definitely not an omelet, but it's not a quiche. It's thicker. It usually has some flour in it, which distinguishes it from a frittata or an omelet. Pashtida is very popular all year round. It's very popular this time of year. And were you to make a pashtida or anything else, what I also want to be sure to include in this lesson are some basic words that you will see all the time in recipes in Hebrew, because there are some great food recipes out there in Hebrew, and we've gone through that in the past. I want to be sure to include for pashtida some of the classic things that go in them. So first off, any pashtida is made with beitzim. One egg is beitza, beitzim, plural, right? Pashtida is often made, like I said, with flour, in particular, kemach tofeach. Kemach tofeach literally means swelling flour. This is self-raising flour. Okay, means that it has baking soda and or baking powder in it, as well as yeast. And then a lot of them will have all sorts of different vegetables. Afunat gina is a classic one. Garden peas, green peas, however you want to pronounce it. Some of the classic, again, instructions for a recipe, but especially when you're making a pashtida, you'll have to lahakpitz. Lahakpitz comes from the verb likfotz, to jump. So lahakpitz is to cause something or someone to jump, i.e. in this case, to saute, right? You're causing things in the pan to jump up. That's what sauteing, that's how you say saute in Hebrew, lahakpitz. Le'arbev is to mix, and le'efot is to bake. Three simple actions you need to do to make a pashtida, as well as a lot of different recipes. So already here on this list, you have a lot of things to cover with regards to Shavuot. You understand certainly the dairy products, all the different dairy products here, another classic Israeli food thing, pashtida, and all the different names for it. What I want to do before getting to your questions, and I see we have a number in the Q&A, and this is a prompt to start asking your questions if you have them. I want to show you a clip from a Israeli documentary. Now, full disclosure, this is an Israeli documentary, meaning that there are Hebrew subtitles, but they're speaking at a normal tempo, which is fast for a lot of people. I'm going to pause it so we can understand what they're talking about. We're actually going to watch the whole little clip. It's only about a minute long of a longer clip. We're going to watch in full, and then we're going to rewind it so we can go through it together. What we're watching is a documentary on the history of the kibbutz. And this is what I wanted to talk about here, that what makes Shavuot different in Israel than anywhere else in the world celebrated by Jews is the importance of the kibbutz in Israeli history, mentality, society, culture. That the kibbutz, being such an integral part of the Zionist movement and the Zionist enterprise in creating the state of Israel, even though the numbers have always been small, how much it contributed. One of the classic things Israelis do on Shavuot, whether they live on a kibbutz or not, is to go visit a kibbutz. Why? What were the two names of the holiday I talked about? Chag HaKatzil, Chag HaBikurim, holiday of the grain harvest, holiday of the first fruits. Where do our grain and our first fruits come from? From farms. There are farms that are not part of kibbutzim, but kibbutzim were always at the vanguard of our agriculture. And a lot of the places that have been affected since October 7th because of our food security were kibbutzim. And it is always a tradition, not just to visit a kibbutz, but that a kibbutz puts on a huge show on the holiday. What we're going to look at in this history of the kibbutz, which is an amazing documentary, all three parts are on YouTube. It's in Hebrew. It's simply called Ha-Kibbutz. I'll send you the link as well for this part. What we're going to look at is just talking about the kibbutz, the kibbutzim's contribution to Israeli and Jewish culture. Very important. And then we're going to watch it in full, and then we're going to translate it together. Sorry, just 1 second. Need to make sure that I can do the audio. There it is. Share sound. Don't worry if you don't get it at first. Again, it's important to just listen and pick out, especially when we're watching this. There's going to be a lot of words that those of you who come from a more a stronger Jewish educational background, you're going to know the words they're saying. Okay? You're going to know a lot of the words that they're saying. And watch the subtitles if it's too hard. Don't just let the words go and look at the visuals, and then we'll go back and pause it so you can follow along.
הטקסים הקיבוציים האלה מנחילים משהו לתרבות הישראלית בכלל? בטח לא ברמת הלחן? יש שירים
כן, אני חושב שנדמה לי שעבדים היינו למשל.
מפה. עבדים היינו.
שומעים היום תמיד לקראת פסח ברדיו.
זה שלום פוסטולסקי מחג הפסח של עין חרוד. עבדים היינו שכולנו שרים וחושבים שזה היה מפולין מהמאה ה-17, מעין חרוד משנות ה-20. באותו דבר זה חלף הגשם, חלף הלך לו, ענן רקיע, חלף הלך לו.
I'm going to pause here. Those of you who, even though Shavuot is almost over and this is an educational outfit. There is a little bit of instrumentation coming up. If you're still not listening to music, it's a cappella now. This is recorded. By all accounts, you should be okay with it. Just want to make sure you had that warning. If you would rather mute this, I'll tell you when you can unmute.
פני אדמה באור חמה שיבולים זקפו ראשיהם בקמה פני הרים זה אל זה ברמה ישוררו שלום שלום הידד הידד אביב היום.
עכשיו, זו דוגמה מצוינת לאיך, קודם כל שבועות זה גם החג, מתי זה נהיה החג? שבאים מהעיר לראות ביקורים בקיבוץ.
זה הרבה שנים, וזה מעניין שזאת העלייה לרגל החדשה.
פנה הגשם, הלך הלך לו, הרקיע, הלך הלך לו, מאדמה ברחמה שיבוא.
מה היה הטקס כאן בעמק? מכנסים את כל הענפים, מביאים את התוצרת שלהם ומתכנסים למקום מרכזי, נותנים את זה לפקיד של קרן הקיימת שהוא פודה את היבול הזה, ובכסף הזה, בעשירית, במעשר שלוקחים מהיבול הזה, בזה קונים עוד אדמה.
בוקע, חומי החורש, ובשופע, מוריק הנור.
היות ואין בית מקדש, אז המבנה אומר, מה זה התחליף של בית המקדש? זה הקרן הקיימת לישראל, שהיא היום גאלה את האדמות מחדש, ואת מה שאני מביא, במקום להביא לבית המקדש, אני מביא, תורם את זה לקרן הקיימת לישראל.
ללאום.
ללאום, כן? האדמת הלאום שמוחכרת לנו, כדי שאנחנו, חס ושלום, לא רכוש פרטי שלנו. אנחנו לא קרישי נדל"ן, אנחנו קיבלנו את זה מהלאום כדי להוציא לחם מן הארץ, אז אנחנו נותנים את הפרי הזה ללאום.
So what are they talking about here? They're talking about what is the kibbutz's contribution to Israeli society and to Jewish identity. So first off, it talks about the fact Avadim Hayinu, right? Those of you who celebrated Pesach, Passover, you sang that at the Seder table, and he's talking about it's not some 17th century Polish tune. It was created by a kibbutz member here at Ein Chalod. Ein Chalod was the center kibbutz, the central kibbutz of the kibbutz movement in the 20s and 30s. He created the tune, right? And he talked about another song, Chalafa Geshem, the Geshem, the rain has passed, and then talks about Shavuot and how Shavuot became the holiday that people came to visit kibbutzim.
זו דוגמה מצוינת לאיך, קודם כל שבועות זה גם החג, מתי זה נהיה החג? שבאים מהעיר לראות ביקורים בקיבוץ.
Right? When did this holiday become the one that people leave the cities, Tel Aviv, Yerushalayim, other cities, to go to see the first fruits on the kibbutz, the bikurim, right? The same idea. And how did that come about?
זה הרבה שנים, וזה מעניין שזאת העלייה לרגל החדשה.
Right? Zot ha'aliyah l'regel ha'chadasha. Aliyah l'regel, pilgrimage festival. And this is the new pilgrimage festival. And so the pictures you're seeing are the act of celebrating Shavuot on a kibbutz.
פנה הגשם, הלך הלך לו, הרקיע, הלך הלך לו, מאדמה ברחמה שיבוא.
מה היה הטקס כאן בעמק?
Maya tekes kan ba'emek. What was the ceremony, right? Tekes here in the emek. Emek is the valley, meaning Emek Israel, where the major kibbutz movement was launched, right? What was the ceremony here for Shavuot?
מכנסים את כל הענפים, מביאים את התוצרת שלהם.
Right, all of the different branches of the kibbutz would come together, bring all of their produce, umitkansim lamakom merkazi, and would come to a central place in the kibbutz.
ומתכנסים למקום מרכזי, נותנים את זה לפקיד של קרן הקיימת שהוא פודה את היבול הזה.
Right, they would give the produce over to a pakid, a clerk of what? Keren kayemet. Keren kayemet leIsrael. Some of you know this as kakal. Other of you know this as the JNF, the Jewish National Fund. Keren Kayemet is the Jewish National Fund. They would give it over to a clerk, Shehu Podeh et hayevul hazeh. He would redeem the produce,
ובכסף הזה, בעשירית, בעשר שלוקחים מהיבול הזה, בזה קונים עוד אדמה.
Right? And with the tithing that was given from this donation to the JNF, the kibbutz was able to buy more land. Right? The act that they're doing here is very reminiscent. That's why he talked about it being the new pilgrimage festival. It's all the actions that used to happen when there was the Beit HaMikdash, the temple in Jerusalem. But instead, being in Jerusalem with the temple, it's on a kibbutz, with a clerk from the Keren Kayemet being one of the priests, redeeming the bikurim, the first fruits, and in turn, creating sustainable agriculture and sustainable livelihood for the Zionist enterprise.
היות ואין בית מקדש, אז המבנה אומר, מה זה התחליף של בית המקדש? זה הקרן הקיימת לישראל.
Right? What is the substitute for Beit HaMikdash? What is the substitute for the temple in Jerusalem? It's Keren Kayemet. It's the JNF.
שהיא היום גאלה את האדמות מחטאה.
That now has Ga'ala redeemed the lands anew.
ואת מה שאני מביא, במקום להביא לבית המקדש, אני מביא, תורם את זה לקרן הקיימת לישראל. ללאום.
And instead of bringing the first fruits to the temple, I bring them to the JNF, and the kibbutz members that are being interviewed correct them and say la le'om. Le'om means the nation, right? The idea that instead of to the temple, it's given to the whole nation of Israel.
כן? האדמת הלאום שמוחכרת לנו כדי שאנחנו, חס ושלום, לא רכוש פרטי שלנו.
Right, the land that's been given to us to use. And he says, God forbid, we're not real estate sharks.
אנחנו לא קרישי נדל"ן, אנחנו קיבלנו את זה מהלאום כדי להוציא לחם מן הארץ.
אנחנו קיבלנו את זה מהלאום. We received the land from the nation כדי להוציא לחם מן הארץ. Folks, this is a really important thing to share, not just because it's the birth of many of the traditions we have in Israeli society, but to point out to a lot of us how Jewish the entire Zionist enterprise was, how Jewish the kibbutzim were, as secular as many of them were and still are to this day. Look at the terminology they're using, right? A lot of these terms I didn't need to translate for you. What does he say here? We received the land from the nation, kidei, in order to what? Leotzi lechem min haaretz. Anyone who's ever recited the blessing over bread any time of their lives in Jewish tradition knows those words, because those are the same words we've always used. Those are the words he's using as well to understand and connect what they're doing on the kibbutz to the larger identity of Israel and Jews.
אז אנחנו נותנים את הפרי הזה ללאום.
We give, and therefore we give that fruit back to the nation. For growing it, we give it back to the nation. Right? That's where this term and this important custom came from. And before I pause, talk about next week's class, I just want to show you, if you were to go on to YouTube, let me pull it up, if I can pull it up here, and so you can see. Yeah, I can show it to you. If you go to YouTube and you type in kibbutz or kibbutzim Shavuot, you will see every year there's a compilation of all sorts of videos of how kibbutzim celebrate Shavuot. And again, people come from around the country to celebrate, or at least be part of, and it'll be tomorrow during the day, to go to a kibbutz and see what their celebrations are. And this is all of the years past, right? Right, this is one example. These are both beautiful and they're also very tragic. This is Kibbutz Erez, which of course was one of the many kibbutzim attacked on October 7th. This is from 5 years ago. But these are just some of the many things that you would see: tractor pulls, harvests, all sorts of folk dancing, all sorts of other festive celebrations that happen on a kibbutz. And that's a traditional way that people celebrate in Israel. Obviously with a festive meal, obviously with dairy products, but going to a kibbutz, the soul of where Chag HaKatzil and Chag HaBikurim can be done, the grain harvest and the first fruit harvest. And you see even in these pictures, right? you see all sorts of different things that have to do with agriculture and where best to see agriculture taking place and the grain harvest and the first fruits than on a kibbutz. Okay. Sad to watch, especially seeing the names of some of these places, but important. Before I take your questions, first off, toda rabba, thank you all for joining, those of you who need to leave at the top of the hour. Next week, we're going to go over no less an important and everyday task. We are going to crack the code on if you're having trouble with gender in Hebrew, because Hebrew is an engendered language. Everything has to be translated, or excuse me, conjugated into feminine or masculine, and words are masculine, feminine. Next week, we're going to talk about all the different ways you can utilize gender-free and gender-inclusive Hebrew. So for those of you who have a hard time conjugating, or it doesn't come as quickly to you, we're going to give you all the clues and shortcuts in how to use Hebrew as much as possible before you have to start conjugating. So you have a lot of different resources ahead of you. So stay tuned for that class. Okay, with that, I'm going to start answering some of your questions. Does Israel have control of food regarding nutrition and safety, or just price control? Good questions. So Israel, we've talked about this before. Israel has a whole system of stickers, the red and the green stickers, that talk about unhealthy levels of salt, sugar, and fat in them. It's called Efshari Bari. You can look it up. We also have very stringent rules regarding foods that are considered organic, and they have to be labeled as such, and they have to go through a stringent protocol. But price control is for basic foodstuffs to ensure that everyone has access to it. In the US, we can pay extra for organic eggs or free-range eggs. Is that available in Israel? Yes. Again, price control is not for everything. If you go buy goat milk or sheep milk or organic free-range cow milk, that is not under price control, folks. I'm talking about price control is very specific products, and you'll see it in the store, the price of it. Obviously, you can get things like free-range eggs and organic eggs. Those will not be included in the pikuach. Okay, they will not be included because they come with extra things. That is not the definition that the government is subsidizing. Okay, but absolutely, you can get all sorts of things in Israel. There's only certain things, however, that are under price control. Why is Eilat a tax-free zone? Just like a lot of places in the world are tax-free zones. There are a lot of places that don't pay VAT or sales tax. That's the case in America. That's the case in Europe. Eilat is a VAT-free zone. Why that is, you can look that up yourselves. I'm not a tax historian, nor do I know more about it. Is there skim milk in Israel? There is 1% in Israel. It is not called skim. Like I said, it's either called chalav, achad achuz. You saw that in that pikuach list. It's also called chalav dal shuman, low-fat milk. But it's not called skim milk. It's the same idea, though, right? Skim milk is little to no fat. 0% fat, I'm not sure if you can get that. You probably can. It's not, however, included in the list of pikuach, of price control. Is organic milk under price control? No. Anything organic, not under price control. What is the difference between gvinat shamenet and shamenet chamutza? Gvinat shamenet, cream cheese, okay? This may be, sorry to presume that people understand the difference. Cream cheese is gvinat shamenet. Let me pull that up. There we go. Okay, now we're back on. Gvinat shamenet. Gvinat shamenet is cream cheese like Philadelphia cream cheese. It's thick, it's spreadable. There are Israeli companies that make it. There's also imported Philadelphia cream cheese and American-style cream cheese. Shamenet chamutza, as I said before, is it here? It's not on this list, but it's in the pikuach list. Shamenet chamutza is literally what it translates to. Shamenet is cream. Chamutz is sour cream. What is the difference between cream cheese and sour cream? They're two entirely different products. Sour cream is what hopefully you put on your levivot tapuchei adama, aka latkes, potato pancakes. Cream cheese is what you put on a bagel or in your ugat gvina, in your cream cheese, in your cheesecake. That's the difference. Okay. Is kefir leben? No. Kefir is a different product altogether from leben. What is the feminine for the adjective fat? Shamen, shmena, shmenim, shmenot. Shamen, shmena, shmenim, shmenot. Do they sell kefir in Israel? Yes, they do in natural food stores, in organic food stores. It's not something you'll find readily in an everyday grocery store. Is natul the same thing as lelo? Great question. Great question. It is in the sense of the meaning of it. Natul is a term you're really going to hear for things like natul caffeine or natul lactose or natul. Those are the two major ones for caffeine and fat. When things don't have sugar in it, as in they're sugar-free, you usually see lelo sukar. But yes, they mean pretty much the same thing. So they're interchangeable in that respect. Great question. What is Gvina Philadelphia? Again, Philadelphia is like Rivion. It's a brand name. There is no such thing in Israel as Gvinat Philadelphia. It's Gvinat Shamenet, cream cheese, and you'll find it under the Philadelphia brand name, among other brand names. Can you type in the word for dense? Yes, I can. Dachus. Dachus. Let me just make that bigger for everyone. Escape. Dense. Dachus. Okay, dachus, dchusa, dchusim, dchusot means dense. How do you get a proper, strong-aged, flavorful cheddar cheese in Israel? Such a thing does exist. It's usually called gvinat cheddar. It's not usually charif. It's usually chad, which means sharp, or as in like a knife is sharp, chad. Or it'll be chad or meyushan. Chad is sharp, and meyushan is aged. Okay. Chad meyushan. How do you ask for strong aged cheese? Same question. Glad I answered it. I am being serious about tenuva being the source of the milky foods on Shavuot, in it being a popular white mainstream thing. Remember, folks, in Israel, the vast majority of Jews here come from Middle Eastern backgrounds, from North Africa, the Middle East, Southern Mediterranean. And yes, there is a large contingent of Ashkenazim. Not all Ashkenazim for thousands of years had the tradition of eating dairy foods on Shavuot. And just as many Jews in the rest of the world did not have a tradition of them on Shavuot. Tenuva took a small minhag, a small custom, and made it mainstream. But as opposed to Pesach, that has a stringent rule about what you can and cannot eat, and Sukkot, which has stringent rules of where you're supposed to live and reside and eat during it, Shavuot doesn't have stringent dietary rules in the Torah. Full stop. That there are traditions associated with it, great. That is what commentary is about. That is what 2,000 years of commentary is about. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about modern Israeli society. Tnuva took an otherwise small minhag, a small custom from one community, and turned it into a much larger thing. Just like we talked about, by the way, if you remember back in Chanukah, we talked about sufganiyot. Sufganiyot is not a universal tradition to eat fried dough on Chanukah. It became a larger one because the small custom became bigger with the industrialization that was able to be done in Israeli society and the need to employ people during hard times in the winter when there wasn't agriculture, apropos agriculture. So the tradition that only some communities had of eating sufganiyot, of fried dough, on Chanukah became a nationwide one. Same thing with dairy. A small tradition turned into a big one with the thanks of commercial intervention. That's what I'm talking about. If it's your tradition through all these years that you can trace your family's generation eating dairy products, I'm not taking that away from any of us. I'm eating my dairy products. All of us are, hopefully, or at least really good, only if it's really good cheesecake. Jay, how can someone volunteer to help with kibbutz harvest? I would love to come and work with the farmers. Wonderful question. There are a lot of options for English speakers and people who don't speak native Hebrew. I'm going to show you two of them right now since this question came up and it's really dear to me as well. So first off, there is a wonderful organization I'm going to share with you now. Let me just pull up a blank here. We'll do that. There is a wonderful organization called Leket. If you've never heard of Leket before, highly recommend getting to know it, if not contributing to it. Leket in a normal year helps glean fields. It helps gather fruits and vegetables to sell at a subsidized price for those in need. But Leket is one of the major organizations that's spearheading volunteer agriculture throughout the country. So you can see right here, volunteer with Leket Israel. You go to their website, leket.org, register to volunteer, and you'll fill out a whole bunch of things, and you see all sorts of parameters here. It tells you all sorts of things. It'll tell you the level of difficulty and where it's needed, and is there a ride. A lot of these opportunities come with subsidized travel, so you don't have to drive out to these farms. Okay, but this is one great option. The other one is on Facebook, for those of you who are on Facebook. There's a Facebook group you can join called Sword of Iron Israel Volunteer Opportunities. Okay, there are, I forget how many tens of thousands of people, 27.7 thousand members in it. It's called Sword of Iron Israel Volunteer Opportunities. You go into it, it'll list opportunities. You can also post, here are my parameters. Can someone help me? This is a great resource as well for those of you who are looking to volunteer in Israel. Thank you for asking that question. Where can you buy ready-made pashtida? Great question. A lot of bakeries sell pashtidot. A lot of everyday supermarkets made pashtida. It's a great one. You find it a lot of places make them, but especially bakeries. Okay, last question. It's not a question about dairy products, but in another lesson you talked about a sentence to say when you make a toast like l'chaim, but it was about the glory of Israel. Great question. So during the classic ceremony that separates Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day, with Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel's Independence Day, there are 12 torches representing the 12 tribes of Israel, lit by 12 members of Israeli society that have done extraordinary achievements and that are called upon to start the holiday. And they say who they are and their parents' names and what they've done that makes them such an exemplary citizen. And right before they launch, they light their torch. They say, Ul tiferet medinat Israel, and to the glory and to the splendor of the state of Israel. I like using that as a toast. L'chaim is absolutely great, to life, but Tiferet Medinat Israel, to the glory of the state of Israel. Certainly, we can use a lot of that nowadays. Is a really nice toast as well to make. We talk about that in Yom Ha'atzmaut as well as in some other lessons. But yes, Tiferet Medinat Israel is how you say it. Okay, with that, we unfortunately need to stop. Toda rabba. Thank you all for joining. Next week, we'll be back with a lesson on gender-free and gender-inclusive Hebrew, helpful for everyone, especially at beginner's level, dealing with the issue of gender in Hebrew. And until then, wish you all a Chag Sameach. We need some simcha in our lives nowadays, right? Chag Sameach is how we wish this one, as it's one of those holidays in the Bible, and therefore we can simply just say Chag Sameach. So in that case, Chag Sameach, have a meaningful, happy Shavuot. We'll see you all here next week. Litraot, take care.